Hello, thank you very much for having Grow Remote here today. We're still quite new, so hopefully I can kind of bring you through this and kind of deliver what we need to deliver. Grow Remote is a community project, and I suppose one of the things we want to do is just help people kind of rethink the environments that we're already in. So I guess if I could just ask you, if you can think of 4 employers that you can get a job with in Tullamore. So if you could write them down, if at all possible, just to get your brain working on that. So who is it? When you think, or when somebody calls you and says, Mom, I want to move home, where can I get a job? Where do you put them to? Who are the companies? And then if you're bringing them to companies, do you think that you can earn a nice salary? So by a nice salary, I mean maybe 70,000 and above. Do you think that you can earn that here in Tullamore? And if not, why not? And if yes, why? And then the next one is, if you want to work for like a really big technology company, do you need to leave Tullamore, or can you stay here? If Orla Martin turned around tomorrow and said, here's a bunch of money, bring jobs here, what is it that you would do if you had the full scope to do that for Tullamore? What is it that you'd bring to the table on that one? And I ask these questions, I guess, because these are the questions that we were asking ourselves in day-to-day conversations before we started our organisation called Grow Remote. So Grow Remote is a totally accidental organisation. I can't stress that enough. We did not mean to build what we have built. We started off in July with a WhatsApp group of community leaders across Ireland. And I was tweeting out today about Leo Offaly and Make It Happen. And I was thinking back, and I regularly quote this evening because it was wet and windy, and I was in Tullamore, and we were sitting down with Caroline Spall, and the junction was newly opened. And she was saying, what you needed to make that work. And it was, your anchor tenants, your local SMEs and startups, but she wanted remote workers. And I was saying, remote workers aren't there. Irish companies aren't doing this, you can't, this is way too big of a job. And she was like, no, well, we just need to do it. And I suppose it was that conversation that led on to a number of other conversations that led us on to what we are today. Because although, no, the companies maybe weren't doing it as much as we'd like, change has to start somewhere. And we need to make it happen. And if we don't make it happen, then change will come upon us and we'll have no say in the direction that takes. So we all went into a WhatsApp group and we started talking about remote work. It kind of seemed like a little bit of hype. There's an estimated 216,000 remote workers in Ireland. And we were thinking, but we're not seeing them. Where are they? What is this? So we just began to talk. And then we ran our first event in Tralee. We had 150 people come up. We had the likes of John Reardon, who's Director for Support for Shopify, sitting beside the team lead for Achill Island Community Futures Group. And it was side by side, because companies need to progress in parallel with communities, in parallel with the people who want to move back into their home areas. And so that's what that was about. And we left that event and people were like, how do we get it here? How do we do whatever? We were saying, gosh, we're only a group of people in a WhatsApp group. We're doing this in our spare time. I don't know. But we began to drive some awareness around that wasn't the next piece. The next piece was mobilisation of groups. So we said, okay, what can we do to help all of these communities do what we're doing, which is essentially just approaching this from a community development perspective and with curiosity and a will to learn. And we went to an organisation called ChangeX, and we built the pack that every community needs. And we said, look, here are the 5 steps that you need to take. Let's kind of introduce you into the other chapter leaders, and let's work on this together. In a period of 7 days, we had 71 applications from communities across the country. We accepted 43. And moving on from that, in 4 months, we grew into 4 countries, still on no budget and still just a WhatsApp group. So the demand was just so significantly huge. Then we kind of moved on, and as we began to go up and down the country, so I was saying last week, the engine has gone on my car. I was like from Letterkenny down to Valentia Island in the space of a couple of days. But in Letterkenny, I heard that Xerox hire remotely. And I went down to Valentia Island and I heard about a company called Keogh. And when we hear about all these companies through our chapters, we put them into this Google Doc, which is a shared file. And we make that into the guide to getting remote work. And that is to drive awareness of the companies that are already hiring here in Tullamore, in Valentia Island, in Arranmore Island, wherever it is that you are. And the only difference between them being here and not being here is a mindset. And I suppose that's kind of the biggest thing that we did. In January of this year, maybe February, I don't know, it's all getting into a bit of a blur, the government took action, and that was something that we were very proud of. We essentially are finding all of these people across Ireland who are working remotely, and they have full-time employment, pensions, sick leave, childcare, all of that. But when they get their jobs, they go onto a website and they apply and they get the job, and there's no ribbon cut. You know, GitLab does not go into Castlebar and announce 3 jobs or 500 jobs. This is a completely different type of job creation. And what we asked the group to do was to look at remote work with that kind of mindset on, and look at this as a serious stream of job creation. And thankfully that was followed up by, I know that the Leo here went in and very articulately asked for changes to policy. And for our group, who were kind of coming in a bit left of field, you know, still a scrappy WhatsApp group and kind of just moulding ourselves into more formal piece, that was a huge day. And I suppose that's kind of one of the biggest pieces that needs to happen in parallel with the communities moving. Then we did upskilling. So remote working companies will tell you that remote in itself is a skill. So we said, okay, we want to get more people employed and engaged locally. How do we begin that? And one of the things that we need to do is skill people up in the skill of remote. So we partnered with an organisation called Workplaceless, and somebody's here in the room who's actually doing the course. But we gave it out for free to people who wanted to get upskilled, and we skilled 110 people in the skill of remote working. And I suppose that's leading into our ultimate ambition to have Ireland as the most skilled workforce of remote workers in Europe. And the only difference between having that and not having that is a mindset difference. So I guess that's how we grew. I mean, there were points of total crazy pieces around that. I was sitting in my grandmother's house one time, and Anne Rabish was on Virgin Tonight with Ivan Yates, and she was asking about, you know, how do we sustain Grow Remote? And I was like, I hope somebody answered that question, because I don't know, like, you know, and it's still in the early days, and it was amazing to see, I guess, just the life that it took on of itself. So Grow Remote essentially is kind of combining a couple of different trends that we're seeing. So talent, 77% of talent of staff are asking for more flexibility. That's from a survey that Vodafone and Abodu did. And so when we're at full employment and talent are asking for something, we need to push for that. More than 50% in the Wicklow County Council commuter survey want to stop the commute. So talent is pushing it, and the number one challenge of corporates is talent. So that can hold an awful lot of weight. Companies, the number one challenge is access to talent. The SFA will tell you that last year, for the first time in a number of years, that was the biggest challenge. And then communities. Communities are opening up digital hubs and spaces, not as a way to not as just a way to support startups, but as a much deeper way to solve some deeper societal challenges we have around the changing main street, where jobs are going, and how kind of the rapid rate of change that's coming in our communities that we have no control over. And so when we saw these 220 community spaces opening up across the country, it is really important that they're helped with everything that we can do to succeed. So to give you, we've just started a schools program that we're going into kind of all primary and secondary schools with this. So this is quite new, but it's try and tell you, I guess, make it more real, because we're hearing that these remote companies aren't really real. So Buffer is essentially a social media scheduling tool, and they are 100% remote, and they give you benefits like a co-working space membership fees, which is brilliant for the likes of the Junction. They hook you up with your laptop and accessories, and you get free company retreats to fly all over the world. When we were going into secondary schools, you see, we were like trying to tempt them with the likes of, you know, flying off to Barcelona once every now and again. So Buffer are a very transparent company. If you buy their product, they'll tell you where the money goes, and this is their salary. So it's 70,000 multiplied by your experience and $98,000 is what you can get working for Buffer. And I suppose that's back to my question around, sometimes we feel like when we're in the regions that we have to compromise on salary, or we have to compromise on something, and we have to take that away. We're more productive. I mean, why would you bring 4 hours back into your day and then say that you're worth less? You know, you don't. We don't need to drop the salary numbers. Automatic, they make WordPress sites, open vacation policy, cover all company travel, company retreats, brilliant company to work for by all accounts. Hotjar, we have them here today, €4,000 for a home office budget, holiday budget. I mean, stuff that Irish companies aren't offering. These are the most forward-thinking companies that are hiring in Tullamore or any other rural location that you can think of. Shopify, they give you a cleaner everybody loves that. Kids care, and they're very, very, I was saying earlier on, the staff, because we're meeting their employees in our chapter meetups, they call themselves choppy folk. They laughed after they say it, they can do that, but they're very engaged, and it's very much a growth mindset culture where everybody's in, to kind of get better in themselves. Oh, missed one. And then there's another company, Doist. So they give 40 days annual leave and paid parental leave. So again, I suppose what I'm trying to do is take away the notion that when I was in a small town in a ETB, I was giving a talk and somebody said, this is just multi-level schemes, or the work from home. Yeah, pyramid schemes. And so they're not, right? There was a time where that was a thing with work from home, but really the most forward-thinking companies are hiring here. The most progressive companies are hiring here. And their staff ratings on places like Glassdoor, where it's anonymous staff feedback, is pretty good across the board. So how come you didn't know this? When you search for jobs in Roscommon or wherever you search for them, you get the jobs that are physically there. Like I was on an unemployment centre in Castlebar, and on the window was you can work for the deli, you can work for the bakery, you can work for whatever. And I thought, we should put up Shopify and Wayfair there and GitHub and Hotjar, but it takes, again, a different mindset. So I suppose you can see there's how many jobs in Roscommon, 75, and they're kind of based in and around there. And then on nodesk.com, which is just a different jobs board, they had 1,157. So I suppose, again, it's where you look, and it's back to that Indeed stat that people are now looking for remote work, and that's what we need to do. We need people to start looking for these opportunities. So you didn't know this probably because we didn't know it. And when we ran our first event in Tralee, we really only knew of Shopify. And for me, Shopify was a big deal because I was running a co-working space in Galway. And they announced however many jobs they announced. And all of a sudden overnight, I saw people from Shopify walking in that I'd never met before. And I was day and night doing community. So I thought I knew an awful lot of people. And I was like, who are you? Why are you here? Where were you before? Where are you going? And it was just overnight, a new world opened up. And I guess if you can look at it in terms of those people walked in the door because Shopify announced those jobs. But other remote companies don't announce the jobs, they're still here. So we went about trying to uncover the world of remote work. And as I said, we kind of go to every location, we try and find whoever else is working, and we upload them here. I actually deleted this original file from my computer somewhere, but I can actually multiply that bottom corner out by 4 now, of companies that I know are hiring in Ireland and that I know are good to work for as well. And you can see there, it's not freelance, so freelance is a different thing. We're talking about full-time salaries, and that's over kind of the right-hand corner. You've got the likes of a Bodoo, an Irish startup. You've got the likes of Remoter, which is a mailing list, and remote.com, and all of these places that are hosting these jobs. And the most important thing is that you no longer look for Tullamore, you no longer even look for Ireland, you look for European. Remote in Europe is what you look for, because that's the time zone. So I guess in terms of the progress that we'd like to see, right, when I tell you about Doist and Buffer and blah, 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 you don't really know the companies, and I know that they're quite new, but that's where our quick wins are going to come from. So we have begun tracking the number of people that we get employed in Grow Remote simply by driving awareness programs. And we want to get people hired in Hotjar, GitHub, GitLab, all of those companies. And that's where we can get some quick wins. But those companies, there is an oversupply of talent in the world of remote work. So they don't need to fight for talent. That's not their challenge. And so that's not how we're going to make the real impact. We will make further impact by getting local SMEs to go remote. So they're hiring the best talent everywhere, and you heard the cases from the perspectives of the companies, our case from the perspective of the communities that people can live and spend locally. And we want to do that by making it really easy for them to go remote, or at least try it. One of our members in Carlow built a jobs board just in his spare time and gave it kind of out back to the community, and people can list a job for free, and it's community owned and operated by everybody. And I suppose that's a way to go. Just give it a go. Just post up a job and see who comes to you. Who wants to live in Valentia Island and work for a local accountancy firm, etc. And then the long term, how we make this sustainable, how we make sure that change stays, is the big corporate companies who are currently in Dublin moving out. And what we need for that to happen, we need a sense of urgency. So while there's full employment, we need to move. And we need to make sure that they implement the policies, the culture, the technology to do remote well, not just half do remote. So most of the Irish companies are doing remote already. In a meetup in one of our chapters, somebody said, I'm working remotely for X. They're all introducing themselves. And I said, brilliant, we're in with their employee experience team next week. And she said, don't mention me, I've got a one-off deal. And somebody else in the room went, oh, I've got a one-off deal. And you realise that these companies are doing one-off deals, but if they're not doing remote correctly, remote is not going to work for them. And when the next recession happens or employment rate changes, they'll let those workers go. What we want is what somebody, our chapter lead in the States, she told me a story about the company that she works for, which is they went remote and they went through a changing period where they had to downsize, and it was the building that went. And all of the remote employees stayed, because that was the most cost-effective, productive, efficient part of their business. And so we need to make sure that we're taking this seriously, and that we're implementing the tools and protocols that will make sure that it's sustainable. So I guess that's kind of where we see it going. John was pushing me on the short, medium, long term there the last day, and that's kind of where we see that moving. There are some stats, I guess, in and around this. Urbanization, so apparently we're all going to move into cities. I fundamentally don't believe that. And if you match that with the workplace trends that we're all meant to be, that remote is meant to rival office, the difference between it going towards urbanization and not urbanization is how we act. And I suppose it's very important that we do step in the middle and say, well, actually, people are, we know from the recruitment partner of Sneem Digital Hub that a year ago, 15% of people were not accepting jobs in Dublin because of the cost of living, and that's now up to 1 in 3. So how do we make sure when they don't accept that job that we've got some place to put them back out into the regions? There were a couple of proof points for me along this journey that said we had to do it. There was simply no other option. Doesn't matter what needed to be done, we just needed to do it. The first one, I guess, was Shopify in Galway. So I saw firsthand how remote can turn around a community. The second one was Expedia. So when we were running our first event in Tralee, a woman who runs Coder Dojo and things, I was talking to her and asked her to speak. She said, no problem. Her name was Mags. Expedia in Seattle found out, contacted Expedia in London. Expedia in London said, what are this Irish group talking about us for? We're not there. They said, oh yes, Louise is there. She's on our senior leadership team. Louise and Mags met the day of Grow Remote. They've been living 10 minutes away from each other for the past 3 years, both working for Expedia. Expedia didn't know about them. They didn't know about each other. Isolation is the biggest killer of remote work. And I suppose that's the moment for me when I said, oh, if they didn't know about each other, what else do we have to uncover? By simply believing in our own communities and looking under the hood. And the next one, was a remote working company. They showed me a map of where they hire in Ireland, and they showed me Galway and Dublin. Do you know why they hire in Galway and Dublin for remote jobs? Because if you ring up somebody in Donegal or Roscommon or Monaghan and you say, do you know who Shopify and Wayfair are? They don't. It's that people aren't applying. It's that people aren't associating these jobs with local areas. And so that for me was a bigger piece. In terms of wider proof points, there was 2 pieces. I don't know if you know Lambda School, but they're a new online school. The Collison brothers from Stripe are now involved in it. They're very active in it, and they come out of Y Combinator as well, which is a great incubator in the States. And they train you up. They school you up, but you don't have to pay until you get a high-paying job. They have just got 100% employment with people employed over $60,000 in salaries each, fully remote. That school has no offices. So I suppose that for me is a big piece, and also the likes of Automatic paying people to move out of San Francisco. The companies that used to be in San Francisco, the companies that used to be abroad are no longer in San Francisco. They're no longer anywhere. They're moving out. And the difference between them being there and being here is us grabbing them. We can't wait for jobs announcements in Tullamore, in Ireland Island, or wherever else it is. So, because I forgot to put it in here, I just note that, so we operate in chapters. So we have 50 chapters across Ireland, Spain, Portugal, and the States. And what they do is they're a local lead who says, right, remote work is a tool for community development. How do we want to use it here? So the likes of Valencia Island say that their population has changed from 2,500 to 695. They want to use remote work to repopulate. So they're running town tasters, which were developed by Dingle. And town tasters are where they bring people in to explore the town, to meet the school, to see who you can go for a pint with on a Saturday, to see who you can go for a cycling with on a Sunday. The human stuff that matters when it's not your career that you have to make a decision on. They got 2 families to look at, they haven't moved yet, but to look at moving to Valencia Island to start the process. To me, that was a huge success, right, for our chapters. And all they did was introduce remote work as part of that process. The next one is meetups. So in our meetup in Castlebar, a guy from GitLab walked in with 200 cards that he was given by GitLab 2 years ago. And he said, I've had nobody to give these to for 2 years. Because nobody was looking in our own backyard for the talent that has already been here working for these multinational companies on nice salaries, amply employed. Diaspora. So there's one chapter who they were like, no, we don't want anybody else moving here. We just want our own back. We know where they are. We know how to get to them. We're just going to tell them about this. And that was how they approached it. And I thought that was fantastic. And I guess the last one is somebody mentioned team offsites and how important they are. And in one town in Ireland, they suffer from over-tourism. So they went too far on the tourism side. And now during the winter months, they dropped from a population of 1,600 to 900. They have a huge amount of vacant properties during the winter. So they're using it now to sell to the likes of Zapier, who have 170 people fully remote, and say to Zapier, listen, Zapier, you want to get close. You don't want to go on a retreat to a city. You can basically rent Kilkee. You know, you can have a village to yourself during the winter. That does a couple of things. It changes the narrative around rural Ireland. If Zapier can run their business from Kilkee, so can you. But also it adds economically back into the region. And when Zapier are there and they're having pints in the pub and they're going to whatever else there is and they're ingraining themselves in the community, remote work will seem more the norm to that local community too. So, on the narrative, I'll just finish up on this piece. I wrote a note to John. John is lucky enough for me on our board of advisors very early on. And I said, Jesus, you know, we're after building a fully remote team, and I've never managed a team this big and a team that's fully remote. You know, how do I do this? And one of the things that we were speaking about is the culture of our chapter leads. And I suppose we are action orientated, and I suppose when I think about what we're trying to do in our culture and what we're trying to do at Grow Remote and what we need to do as communities to get to where we need to go, we need to look for the positives and drive forward because the vision is so good, rather than focusing on, you know, what we need to fix and all of those pieces. They will follow from driving us forward. So I walked into one town and I said, they said, oh, the IDA have done nothing for us. Sure, they only came down and did one tour in 3 years or something. And I said, do you know who Shopify and Wayfair are? And they said, no, but that doesn't matter. The IDA didn't do. And I said, well, they actually did do something for you. You have those jobs, so let's try and get those. And that was an area with an average salary of 22,000. And the starting salary in some of these is 28 and on. It can make a significant difference to their communities. Again, it's a mindset thing. And the last piece is that, sorry, it's not the last piece, go one more thing, but last week on Instagram, Enda Regan, actually from Shopify, who we met in our Leitrim Roscommon meetup, took over Instagram, and he did a day in the life of a remote worker thing, because again, we just need to make this real, right? We need to make it tangible. 8 people sent, our following on Instagram, by the way, was 200 people, so it wasn't a big following. 8 people sent him a message. My age, I'm like 29, not sure what generation you categorize me in. I'm having a very hard time with getting to 30, but and 8 people messaged him saying, oh, you're working from, what town does he work in? It's not Boyle. No, it's Cootall, that's it. Really, really small place. And and people were like, how did you do it? Where did you find it? What's it like? What's the salary? And they had all of these questions. And again, for them, and that was another proof point for me, all we need to do is accentuate our positives, change the mindset so that we're championing the quick wins. We're moving towards the medium-term stuff with SMEs and helping them with their talent challenge. And that collectively, we are pushing the larger corporates to allow us to live wherever we want to live, because it makes commercial sense for them and it makes commercial sense for our communities. The last thing is our guide. If you download it, growremote.studio/guide, you'll get kind of what we've discovered in terms of how you find remote work, and hopefully you get employed and then we get a win on our impact measurement. But thank you very much for today. And I suppose I and on behalf of our Grow Remote team would have to thank the Leo and Offaly for the work they've done in supporting our bigger mission and kind of bringing more substance to it. So thank you very much.